Mother of Buddhas by Hixon, page 12. My intention here is to present in condensed form a picture of the universe as seen through the eyes of Mother Prajnaparamita, the wisdom goddess, using the words of these contemporary meditations. Such an overview will help readers maintain their sense of coherence and not become discouraged by the richness and density of the text. Readers who experience affinity with these 40 selections in Mother of the Buddhas are invited to set forth on an ecstatic pilgrimage within the complete Prajnaparamita Sutras in 8,000 lines, only a small portion of which has been expanded into this volume. The nature of what is. The pervasive theme or themelessness of Prajnaparamita is signaled by the phrase depth of unthinkability, the depth of unthinkability. The nature of what is termed reality, pure presence, or truth by the sutra can never be described, thought about, or indicated in any way. The following terms are, therefore, used in these meditations to describe all relative structures as well as to refer to the perfection of wisdom, Mother Prajnaparamita herself: undefinable, unthinkable, indescribable, indecipherable, indefinable, ungraspable, unformulatable, inconceivable, incomparable, unlocatable, unisolatable, unapproachable, unchangeable, unreachable, uncalculatable, unframeable, uncorrelatable, uncharacterizable, insubstantial, non-perspectival, non-self-existing, foundationless, baseless, traceless, nameless, egoless, goalless, abodeless, stainless, measureless, connectionless, relationless. These private terms are always linked with the compassionate warning of Prajnaparamita to her beloved spiritual children, never to themize, analyze, review, formulate, represent, project, perceive, isolate, define, grasp, crystallize, rarefy, conceptualize, concretize, objectify, conceptualize, or personalize what is, simply because reality remains great, profound, inevitable, limitless, boundless, boundaryless, frontierless, divisionless, identityless, infinite, transparent, harmoniously function, open, free, elusive, deep, pure, empty, sublime, calmly quiet, at peace, and blissfully awakened. These terms indicate that reality is not a void or an absence, but is simply more real and more fulfilling than any conceptual or perceptual capacity can convey. Such is the Prajnaparamita Sutra, reliable report on the inevitable nature of what is. Since the central teaching of the sutra is reality, which by definition cannot be grasped. It may sound like an exalted yet terribly boring text, yet quite the reverse is true. The sutra makes this fundamental and universal makes the fundamental and universal ineffability, this elusiveness of truth, come delightfully alive. In the realm of transmundane experience, in the struggles and temptations of the spiritual path, and in the daily context of the natural world, it allows us to experience boundlessness and unthinkability, vast cosmopoetic vision, and joyous altruistic love. Its scintillating and palpable aliveness indicates the sutra is not composed of mere words or abstract ideas, but of living spiritual energy, which it refers to as transferable, meritorious energy that can be dedicated and consecrated to the conscious enlightenment of all beings. As we read and participate in our whole being in this esoteric wisdom passage and the heartfelt compassion passages skillfully interwoven in the sutra, we come alive with the infinitely intelligent life of Mother Prajnaparamita, experiencing new birth in her mysterious womb of perfect wisdom. Precisely this transmission of wisdom empowers all Buddhas from beginningless past, the open future, and the endless dimension of the present to express the Buddha nature, the total awakeness of omniscience. We can sense this current of universal blessing as it flows through our mind stream, which is not our limited personal memory, but a mortal and spiritual continuity extending over countless lifetimes. Each being's unique, distinct, and indefinable mind stream flows uninterruptedly through different cosmic eons on habitable planets in billion world systems as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. A mind stream manifests through our physical bodies, which have been evolved by interdependent biological and spiritual processes. The same mind stream can manifest as well on subtle and heavenly planes of being, non-physical in nature. Astonishingly enough, what we perceive around us as conscious beings, whether incarnate as tiny insects or as advanced contemplatives, are the visible manifestations of unique mind streams that are beginningless and that are evolving interdependently towards omniscience. If we are able to experience this intuitively, our narrow, habitual world will tremble. The universe quakes in all 6 dimensions whenever the Lord Buddha discourses. However, the core of Prajnaparamita, no matter how extensive or visionary its cosmology or cosmopoetry, remains crystal clear. The reality to which all names refer is utterly ungraspable and inconceivable, possessing absolutely no physical or metaphysical existence. The question, how can one engage intellectually with such an antiquated, non-Western worldview, does not really arise. Why? Because this revolutionary teaching of perfect wisdom does not present a doctrinal worldview that demands either intellectual assent or leap of faith. In fact, the Prajnaparamita is not a worldview at all, but a viewless view, which transmits the energy of spiritual awakening. The total awakeness of universal Buddhahood. To participate intimately in this illuminating energy, we must avoid the tendency to objectify or freeze it into words or concepts. As the Sutra proclaims, perfect wisdom is never limited to any of the verbal or nonverbal expressions. Prajnaparamita is sheer limitlessness. The compassion, wisdom of the Bodhisattva. Once opened by the Prajnaparamita Sutra to the inexhaustibly rich mystery of what is, the eyes of our intuition cannot be closed again. Every line of this timeless text gives us wider access to an indivisible panorama until we spontaneously come to regard what is as coherently and harmoniously functioning transparency or openness, like empty space, which does not come or go, which does not increase or decrease. The response that the sutra subtly generates in our awareness is not step-by-step reasoning, but existential intuition, inevitable and direct. Yet there is no irrationality here. The coherent, functional nature of the universe is stressed by the sutra because our involvement in the relative world sustains what is essential to enlightenment. Compassionate engagement with our evolutionary careers, the evolutionary careers of all living beings. Thus, sensitive, loving concern and compassionate action becomes the arena for the most radical, transcendent wisdom. As the sutra reveals, the absolute absence of the substantial creation of any forms is not different from the transparent, harmonious, and current functioning of all forms. Absolute openness and relative functioning are not divided, not two alternative dimensions, but are utter simplicity. If one labels and hence experiences this simplicity as material forms and personal consciousness, one is foolishly numbering and labeling that which has no multiplicity or identity. To know this ontologically transparent functioning, to perceive it accurately, and to reason about it appropriately makes possible the essential vow of the Bodhisattva, the being of enlightenment who is completely committed to healing, liberation, and full awakening of all that lives, and who displays an astonishing array of liberative skills. The Sutra's teaching on wisdom constantly point out that reality does not contain the slightest possibility for self-satisfaction, self-aggrandizement, self-elevation, self-involvement, self-service, self-consciousness, self-perpetuation, or even for self-liberation or self-realization. This total interdictation of egocentricity or substantial independent self-existence excludes even the self-conscious sense of being a bodhisattva. The bodhisattva's mind is not frightened by the total absence of any recognizable, definable, or findable being called a bodhisattva. Thus, the sutra refers even to its own teaching as a non-teaching, which has never been displayed to any separate students by any separate teacher. As the brilliant Subhuti, the central speaker in the sutra and its most uncompromising dialectician affirms, this is absolutely nothing to understand. Subhuti even insists that no Buddha can be found, nor any principle of Buddha nature, nor any Prajnaparamita, proclaiming even if there were some reality more exalted than final nirvana, that too would be a magic display, a dream display. He goes on to suggest those conscious beings who are mature enough to receive the radical teaching of perfect wisdom always regard themselves simply as a brilliant display of magical power without any substantial self-existence. There should be no residue tendency to hear and grasp as some independent reality the words of the wisdom teaching, nor to isolate or rarefy their meaning, nor to experience as a separate reality what they are indicating. These and other purposely shocking statements made by Subhuti are balanced by the more mellow approach of his brother disciple Shariputra, who teaches us to be authentically established in the truth by being free from any personal claim to truth, to be perfectly stationed without the slightest physical or metaphysical ground upon which to stand. Shariputra, whose depth of realization is kept subtly hidden, often poses key questions to his brother Subhuti, whom Lord Buddha has rightfully called the foremost among those who dwell in the inconceivable peace of perfect wisdom. Sariputra's approach is an exquisite balance of the pure Vega negativa of Subhuti and the cosmopoetic tone of revelation. He sings beautifully about Prajnaparamita in the selection Mystic Hymn to the Wisdom Mother. She is worthy of infinite praise. She is utterly unstained because nothing in this insubstantial world can possibly stain her. She is ever flowing fountain of incomparable light, and from every conscious being on every plane of being, she removes the faintest trace of illusionary darkness. This and similar passages suggest that the feminine nature of Prajnaparamita is taken serious by the sutra. But this mother, matrix, guide, power, and bliss of all Buddhas and their embryonic forms, the Bodhisattvas, is not simply tender and nurturing in some stereotypical sense of the feminine. Mother Prajnaparamita expresses her mystic motherhood equally and perhaps more centrally as the uncompromising discipline of transcendent insight, a union of inexhaustible tenderness and diamond clarity that is like open space radiates from the sutra as the strong feminine voice of Prajnaparamita, heard directly by all the fully awakened ones, the humble lords of enlightenment. The most intimate companion of Lord Buddha is Ananda, the very heart of love, the most beloved disciple. He is given the awesome responsibility of ensuring for thousands of years the living presence of Prajnaparamita as scriptural manifestation and initiatory vehicle. In the section, Great Disciple receives transmission, the Lord Buddha proclaims, O blessed Ananda, most blissful disciple of awakened enlightenment, I now totally entrust and thoroughly transmit to you the scriptural form and the spiritual energy of Prajnaparamita, the teaching which is beyond any expression or explanation, by which I have clothed in Sanskrit letters, so that over millennia it may be carefully investigated. Profoundly contemplated and openly proclaimed to the whole world, so that it will not be neglected or disappear for thousands of years. Twice in these 40 selections, Ananda asked Lord Buddha to explain his cosmic smile, which shines forth on certain rare occasions, illuminating the boundless vistas of all world systems, rising up as a luminous wave even to the highest heaven. In one of these tender instances recorded in the section Goddess of the Ganges, a feminine wisdom being, is the recipient of this enchanting smile from Mother Prajnaparamita through the golden form of the awakened enlightenment, the impersonal term for Lord Buddha. This feminine visitor to Buddha's assembly is then predicted to become the Buddha golden flower in the future time, called the great star-like eon. Her transmundane Buddha field, a pure land emerging spontaneously from her enlightenment, will contain a vast spiritual community called the immeasurable, inconceivable community of perfect wisdom. Shakyamuni's Buddha field, in which we are now residing spiritually, contains countless suffering beings. Because of his unusually developed compassion, Shakyamuni's Buddha field, in which we are now residing spiritually, contains countless suffering beings because of his unusually developed compassion. Golden Flower's transcendent realm, by contrast, will contain no jungles inhabited by carnivores, no lonely highways attacked by brigands, no deserts without springs, no districts decimated by disease or famine. The goddess of the Ganges is profoundly moved by this precise prediction of her eventual enlightenment from Shakyamuni Buddha. She miraculously brings forth golden flowers, joyous and reverently scattering them over the perfect embodiment of enlightenment. These magnificent blossoms, neither substantially self-existent nor non-self-existent, do not fall to the floor of the assembly, but remain suspended in the golden cloud around the serene figure of the enlightened one. These blossoms, neither substantially self-existent nor non-existent, and therefore subject neither to conventional laws nor routine perception, signal to sympathetic readers of the Sutra that we are deep in the realmless realm of Prajnaparamita. All structures and processes of relativity are all material or mental forms, and every mode of awareness by which they may be perceived or conceived, all possible phenomena, beings, or events that could be experienced by any form of conscious life, express precisely the same indeducible existential status as this floating cloud of golden blossoms. This description is what I call cosmopoetry. The cosmopoetry of the sutra always has a cutting edge which penetrates our unexamined myths about the independently existing natural world and the substantiality of a personal and collective history. We cling to various objectifying myths, both consciously and unconsciously. No passage of the sutra, no matter how visionary or tender in its tone, is without this cutting edge of transcendent, selfless insight, which liberates us from even the most subtle clinging. Yet beautiful affection, tenderness, loyalty, and love remain primary for the bodhisattva. These radiant qualities become stronger as they are purified from the dross of self-interest, self-assertion, and even self-awareness by the flame of perfect wisdom. The moral strand of the Prajnaparamita Sutra is very empathetic. It is firmly based upon a single radical principle, the authentic practice of the Mahayana. Never abandon living beings by crossing over entirely into the expansiveness of the Absolute, by rejecting and negating relativity. These bodhisattvas do not become liberated from life, nor do they pursue any form of self-separate realization. They direct an ecstatic flood of love and friendship towards all, connecting their mind stream as intimately with all beings as with their own most cherished family members and beloved friends. This astonishing spiritual feat frees the bodhisattva from every impure intention of harming, degrading, abandoning, or even merely hurting ignorant being, or even mere ignorant. This direct and ecstatic flood of love and friendliness towards all, connecting their mind streams as intimately with all beings as with their most cherished family members and beloved friends. This astonishing spiritual feat frees the bodhisattva from every impulse, intention of harming, degrading, abandoning, or even merely ignoring others. This attitude of constant concern and responsiveness, much more rigorous than any specific set of moral codes, the sutra calls the true life of responsibility. It can be lived with equal intensity and effectiveness by monks and nuns, by married or single lay practitioners, by heads of state, or by the most humble working persons. The bodhisattva ideal is democratic. It demands only a way of life and a form of livelihood or service that elevates beings rather than deceiving or oppressing them. It is an act of compassion, an intensely practical ideal, a parallax. Bodhisattvas illuminate for living beings whatever righteous, dignified, excellent, and wholesome ways of life can be envisioned and practically manifest in the world. When speaking about Mara the tempter, the sutra suggests that the most extreme temptation of egocentricity is the desire to attain Buddhahood in order to exalt oneself above other living beings. The Bodhisattva manifests as a panoramic compassion awareness that never separates itself from the collective evolutionary career of all conscious beings. As the sutra hints, Buddha mind is really the one mind of all beings, fully awakened, fully matured, fully sensitized. As the Buddha mind confirms, speaking through the Prajnaparamita, The Tathagata, one who has beautifully disappeared into pure presence and awakened as sheer reality, transcends all conventional views, knows the minds of living beings as intrinsically infinite and inexhaustible. Just as empty space cannot disintegrate or be destroyed, neither can the infinitely open space of all minds ever be narrowed or extinguished. Moral purity is understood by the Sutra as selflessness rather than any particular form of behavior. But transcendent selflessness never exists in a contemplative void, simply for its own sake. The selflessness of Mahayana is always a selflessness for others, a selflessness and therefore ecstatic love for all beings. The thought flow and even the physical body of the bodhisattva become perfectly pure because they manifest solely for the sake of guiding and maturing all conscious beings. Once a being has awakened to the perfection of wisdom, it becomes a central core which blossoms as five other transcendent, selfless perfections: generosity, goodness, patience, commitment, meditation. These supreme excellences or paramitas are the mysterious energy of Mother Prajnaparamita that manifests spontaneously through the sincere practitioner of the perfection of wisdom. These five subtly perfections do not result from self-effort. They remain radically different from the salutary qualities which their names usually denote. For instance, the Sutra describes the selfless perfection of patience as patiently accepting the ultimate elusiveness of truth, which always remains beyond any finite or conventional teaching, beyond doctrine, beyond explanation, description, or designation. In the same light, the Sutra elucidates the selfless perfection of goodness. These blessed mind streams have become perfect in moral action, which is to say that even their slightest movements and intentions care for, guide, and spiritually elevate countless beings, orienting them towards the omniscient, which is simply the total awakeness of all Buddhas of the past, present, and future. The nature of the perfect generosity is always distinct from any conventional notion of generosity. If hungry predators attack me, I will lovingly offer my body as an opportunity for the perfection of generosity to develop in this mind stream. The perfection of commitment is characterized by the sutra in this way. Bodhisattvas are free from the slightest mental or physical laziness, actively in every instant expressing the illuminated energy and compassion by avoiding the false implications of self-existence, including such notions as gain, fame, honor, respect, and self-satisfaction of any kind. The radical purity of the mind stream, which has become an expression of these five currents of perfection, of wisdom streaming from the mother of all Buddhas, is not the ethereal or abstract purity, but is experienced in the very concrete existential mode of selfless love. I can never generate the slightest thought of hatred or even irritation towards any of these most precious living beings, even though they may torture or destroy my body during 100 consecutive lifetimes. The Sutra regards the ceaseless practice of Prajnaparamita as inseparable from every breath every conscious being. The sutra regards the ceaseless practice of Prajnaparamita as inseparable from every breath of every conscious being. Such radical metaphysical, moral purity, or universal selflessness is essential for advancement in Prajnaparamita, as the sutra confirms or affirms. One cannot even begin to approach the living presence of Mother Prajnaparamita with a mind stream tainted by basically selfish motivation, or even by passing thoughts of self-service or aggrandizement. Cosmic contemplation of Prajnaparamita. The relationship of the authentic practitioner of Prajnaparamita Sutra as a living presence is richly religious. Perfect wisdom is not simply a philosophical enterprise or a science of contemplation. It is prayerful devotion. They study it prayerfully and venerate its visible symbol, the scriptural text, through traditional modes of worship, thereby absorbing its subtle energy more fully and directly as nourishment and absorbed into their bloodstream. They study it prayerfully and venerate its visible symbol, the scriptural text, through traditional modes of worship, therefore absorbing its subtle energy more fully and directly as nourishment is absorbed into the bloodstream. This worship and communion with Prajnaparamita, goddess of perfect wisdom and great mother of all Buddhas, through the sacred medium of sacred manifestation, has vast implications for generating universal awakening. The sutra speaks about its own power in what may appear to outsiders as hyperbolic language. But this heightened mode of expression is simply the most adequate representation of spiritual energy, which has an authentic practitioner actually experienced during prayerful study and ceremonial worship of this living text. In fact, the ecstatic worlds of the sutra are not just representations, but actual channels of the measureless transformative power called Mother Prajnaparamita. The person honoring and venerating the glorious Prajnaparamita, source of mothers of all Buddhas, will generate more power for universal conscious enlightenment than if all the living beings in the billion world systems, as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River, were to build sacred stupas and honor them with purity of intention for an entire eon. Our cosmological view of space and time is expanded by the Prajnaparamita Sutra, far beyond the habitual notions and cosmic myths prevalent in any culture, including modern scientific-oriented cultures. In practicing the Prajnaparamita, the Bodhisattva contemplates other world systems beyond this planetary system, an expanse of inhabited worlds immeasurable in extent, worlds beyond reckoning in number, inconceivable in their essential nature, infinite in their complexity of their life forms, and limitless in their subtlety of their civilizations. The Bodhisattva contemplates the range of past eons in each of these world systems as well. Such expansive contemplation is more than just a science fiction projected projection of a vast material universe, or a neutral intellectual exercise in pushing back the limits of our habitual world. Rather, it confirms a central principle of Prajnaparamita that states the limitless creative power of ontological, transparent manifestation can never be exhausted. In other words, no matter how far mind can reach and whatever mind can imagine, the true nature of manifestation is pure presence. The awakened one always joyously teach and indicate with every word and wordless gesture the absolute inexhaustibility of pure presence. The vastness of this cosmopoetic vision is not empty or impersonal, but is filled with the incandescent nectar of selfless love, tender joy, and gratitude. The Bodhisattva contemplates the greatest intensity of sympathetic joy and gratitude. Every single seed of goodness planted by conscious beings during beginningless eons in all these world systems. The section, Incomparable and Measureless Joy, leads us through a complete meditation on sympathetic joy. As the sutra explains, sympathetic joy is the obverse of the unbearable compassion experienced by the bodhisattva who contemplates cosmically and ceaselessly the excruciating suffering, obvious and subtle, of all finite forms of consciousness, including in this contemplation the hellish consciousness created by living beings on this earthly plane and on subtle planes. These tidal waves of astonishing joy and unbearable compassion can be embraced only by the oceanic heart of Prajnaparamita, the perfect wisdom which gazes into the limitless expanse of all structures as into the starry nighttime sky, and which reveals the expanse of manifestations as an infinite profusion of flowers. The Bodhisattva experiences unique ecstasy and exhilaration, feeling neither discontent nor contentment. Obsessive thoughts or emotions cannot persist in the total absence of insubstantial or independent self-existence. This vastly expanded spatial and temporary world of bodhisattvas is not merely a larger objective container, but is a way of seeing the insubstantial play of universal enlightenment through the transparent constitutes of individual awareness. The fundamental fact remains that all is simply suchness, pure presence, inextinguishable and indistinguishable simplicity. As the sutra says of Mother Prajnaparamita, she compassionately reveals the world as purified from any false concepts of worldhood or worldliness. Therefore, the vast, beginningless cosmos that shines before the intuitive gaze of the Prajnaparamita is not a world in any ordinary sense of the term. It is not even a place. Appearing structures have no actual localization in time or space, because space, time, and locality itself are just other appearing structures, neither locatable or isolatable. The measureless universe, according to Prajnaparamita, is a boundless field of subjectiveless, objectiveless awareness where, without trace, Buddhas freely and joyfully roam. Meditating on the perfection of wisdom is equivalent to meditating on this non-self existing cosmos, which surrounds and includes us, a cosmos in which all relative structures themselves are like realized sages who have laid down their burdens by recognizing that no burdens were ever imposed upon them in the first place. The sutra tirelessly asserts that the immeasurability and unthinkability of the cosmos as a whole is equivalent to the immeasurability and unthinkability of every single detail of existence, every ungraspable form, thought, perception, or event, and is equivalent as well to the immeasurability and unthinkability of Mother Prajnaparamita. The Lord Buddha clearly indicates in the sutra that no one should idealize the perfect wisdom as especially great, sublime, or perfect, because every structure or process of relativity expresses the very same inconceivable and boundless perfection. To engage in the perfection of meditation is to concentrate ceaselessly upon the entire subjective and objective cosmic display as miraculous in the sense that it springs forth spontaneously without relying on any underlying source, basis, or ground. What is innately none other than perfect wisdom. As the sutra reveals, all phenomena are Buddha phenomena. The enlightened Subhuti repeatedly rejects any finite, systematic technique of meditation of Prajnaparamita, eliminating even the slightest conceptual approach, because as this brilliant master of dialect proclaims, this is a teaching without any path to its realization, because perfect wisdom already reigns. Subhuti and the other masters of Prajnaparamita are reluctant to endorse any formal meditation practice to discover or develop it. The various spiritual paths or contemplative methods that purport to control, escape from, renounce, or destroy limiting structures are ultimately useless, because no structure has ever been or could ever be substantially encountered, much less stopped or dismantled. However, just as one must learn Sanskrit, English, or some other language to read and contemplate the Prajnaparamita, so the basic vocabulary and syntax of the Buddhist spiritual disciplines must be mastered before a full appreciation of Prajnaparamita can be drawn. Some very advanced meditational suggestions are offered in the selection Astonishing Lion's Roar. Each and every being or event which can be experienced, small or great, particular or general, is boundaryless, like the clear blue sky, like the dazzling rainbow of color on Mount Meru, like interpenetrating rays of light from the sun, like sounds which have no sharp edges, like the frontierless expanse of living worlds and conscious beings, like the supreme wakefulness of the Buddha, like the cumulative kindness and insight of all aspiring beings everywhere, like the earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness manifest as transparent currents in a single ocean. If we regard these lines as metta meditation instruction, We should not imagine some finite process of sitting in a particular position or engaging in certain techniques of concentration. Simply through prayerful study, chanting, joyful contemplation, and veneration of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, a meditation of perfect wisdom will manifest spontaneously both in dream and during waking states. In the selection, Inner Penetration of Dreams, the Sutra advises aspirants how to recognize authentic dreams, which indicate the irreversibility of the spontaneous meditation as transmeditative states, free from any distinction between absolute expanse and relative existence. A sure indication that a bodhisattva has attained irreversibility of commitment is when they dream themselves to be the Tathagata, surrounded by radiant Buddha assemblies consisting of thousands of millions of dedicated practitioners seated in deep meditation together within a circular Dharma hall beneath a high-peaked roof. The sutra indicates many purportents of attainment in the unique selection mirror image of pure presence, which contains Sarabhuti's non-discursive discourse explaining how he is a mirror image of Lord Buddha, 300 monks, 500 nuns, 5,000 high heavenly beings, and 6,000 male and female bodhisattvas are deeply illuminated in various ways. In similar instances, following discourse of the Buddha which express truth perfectly, our particular billion world universe trembles. Flower petals rain from the empty blue sky, and heavenly beings scatter fragrant sandalwood powder. The same auspicious, non-self-existent phenomenon manifests after the earthly bodhisattva Dharmagata delivers a vibrant discourse in the selection Tathagata neither come nor go. His transmission of truth manifests even more enlightening energy than Subhuti's discourse, which was directly primarily to heavenly beings. The earth has a more powerful spiritual ambiance than even the highest heaven, since human birth is the most fruitful and precious among all possible levels of awareness. This assertion is not to be taken as naive anthropomorphism. Life-bearing planets and other solar systems presumably manifest significantly different lines of biological evolution. Somewhere, awakened bodhisattvas may assemble gentle giant spiders. The precious human birth refers not to outward biological form, but to the inward potential for panoramic awareness and selfless compassion. After Dharmagata speaks, 64,000 practitioners open to the pure eye of transcendent insight, which penetrates and clarifies all structures of relativity without exception. This image is not far-fetched to someone who has attended a Dalai Lama's Kalachakra initiation in India, where more than 100,000 participants receive a very definite and intimate transmission of energy of Mother Prajnaparamita through the powerful lineage of the Vajrayana Buddhism. In fact, the description of the symbolic city and place of Dharmagata found in the selection Sublime Saga Asada Parudita reminds one vividly of the Tantric mandala, a circular diagram symbolizing and actualizing becoming the abode of a deity, visualized during the Kala Chakra empowerment. Meditating on a mandala ignites our intuitive and transformative vision, not only of external cosmos, but also of the equally vast and complex inner cosmos, the human body in its subtle dimensions. The Prajnaparamita Sutra alludes to the mystic door which opens into the sublimely awakened human body, experienced as the culmination and consummation of all possible manifestations. The description of Dharmagata's mandala city is multivalent, but one of its spheres of meaning is as the elucidation of the body's awakened and transformed subtle energy system. 500 symbolic shops containing every kind of precious creation has arranged beautifully and geometrically around the 12-mile square center of the mandala city as in a rich colored painting. These exquisite places of display are offering are joined internally by transparent, symmetrical passages and corridors, some designed for animal-drawn vehicles, others for palanquins, and still others for pedestrians, so that the transactional flow of the symbolic city remains perfectly harmonious. All such esoteric maps, however, are to be studied with a liberal attitude of Prajnaparamita, that one simply cannot describe what it is that the enlightenment experiences. Struggles and triumphs of the path. The Prajnaparamita Sutra contains an intense honesty about the difficulty, struggle, and danger of spiritual path. Long passages describe the deceitful activity of Mara, the principle of negative egocentricity. The sutra does not present a modern psychological analysis of unconscious complexes. Mara is described as non-self-existing yet extremely dangerous presence, operating at large in an insubstantial universe, subtly distorting conceptions and perceptions, able even to generate misleading objective events or sequences of events. The polymorphosis Mara may approach the venerable practitioner in various guises during meditative trance, dream, or even the walking state. The spiritually polluting influence of Mara can also manifest as a heavenly sounding voice. The psychic energy of Mara names the relatives of its victim through 7 generations in order to make the temptation more convincing. Mara can magically or hypnotically project various earthly or heavenly forms, or can act through unsuspecting human beings, monk or nun, mother or father, respected relative or cherished friend. Lord Jesus rebuked this negative energy when it expressed itself through the foremost disciple Peter, using the uncompromising and penetrating words, "Get behind me, Satan." The principle of Mara can even invade, at least momentarily, advanced and loyal disciples. Significantly, both Lord Jesus and Lord Buddha were visited by the power of the tempter just before their outward manifestation as world teachers. Absolutely no one is exempt from the approach of Mara. The most terrible delusion pervaded by Mara is spiritual pride, the disease of self-adulation, which seeks personal glory in becoming a Buddha. The invasions of Mara can be dramatic, but also extremely subtle. Mara can manifest almost invisibly as the pollution of the mental stream by self-oriented and self-serving motivation and behavior. In the section Protective Power of Mantra, the sovereign of the heavenly realms, King Chakra, receives the supreme antidote against the poison of Mara, the seed sound that contains the entirety of the perfect wisdom. Om Gate Gate Paragate Parmasam Gate Bodhi Swaha. Gone, 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 beyond, even the beyond is fully enlightenment, so be it. It, just after the moment of spiritual transmission, as is often the case, Chakra experiences a subtle attack by Mara's elusive forces, realizing that not just at this moment, but perpetually, such forces of negativity are intent on finding a way to invade beginning or advanced practitioners, intent on wounding them spiritually and even destroying them. The king of the 33 heaven uses the mantra he has just received from Lord Buddha, the all-pervading mantric energy, which instantly spreads Prajnaparamita, infusing it profoundly into all minds and hearts. The effect of this invocation is swift and powerful. Immediately, Mara, the adversary, who is sheer negative egocentricity, turns away from the luminous Buddha assembly and retreats into the perpetual darkness. Mara and his demonic forces will find no way to invade any conscious being who recalls, reveres, chants, communicates, embodies, and radiates perfect wisdom. The spiritual power of Prajnaparamita is not some limited form of counter energy, but it is the transmission and realization of radical selflessness, not simple personal, but universal selflessness. Mara's only point of entry into King Chakra was the king's natural royal pride. However, any consciousness or unconscious self-involvement on the part of Chakra was immediately undercut and dissolved by the transcendent insight generated by Prajnaparamita. The King Chakra received the empowerment of perfect wisdom directly from Lord Buddha in the radiant Buddha assembly. So we can sense Buddha's vibrant presence and transmission while reading and contemplating the sutra. When complimenting the Lord Buddha on a particularly excellent formation of perfect wisdom, Subhuti responds, "The powerful transmission of the Buddha nature alone speaks through me, O Lord. So my words are never inadequate or to Prajnaparamita." Similarly, Buddha remarks to Chakra, who is not a realized master as Subhuti is, Listen, O king, to the Buddha, nature speaking through you. So whenever an awakened master or even an aspirant to perfect wisdom speaks with authentic inspiration about Prajnaparamita, these words are actual transmission from awakened enlightenment itself. The speech of the humble Lord of Enlightenment is simple, relaxed, balanced. Shakyamuni Buddha discourses with what the Sutra calls the wise balance and ease, which is free from any sense of doctrinal rigidity. We can almost hear the beautiful tone of his voice. Perfection of wisdom cannot be expounded and learned, nor isolated and described, nor stated in words, nor reflected upon by means or in terms of any limited pattern of awareness. This perfect indescribability and unapproachability is a consequence of the fact that all structures of relativity on all levels of experience are inherently indescribable and unapproachable, inconceivably calm and blissful. The same inconceivable peacefulness and innate bliss is manifest in every detail in and of existence. The Lord Buddha here offers a succinct expression of the advanced teaching in which selfless compassion subtly transmutes into bliss through the realization that universal enlightenment is already and always the plain fact. What the Bodhisattva vows with every fiber of his or her integrity is that all precious and beloved living beings should fully awaken to this naked fact, that which becomes universally conscious enlightenment. Thus, the Bodhisattva is sometimes called one who upholds the radical understanding of universal enlightenment as present reality, and is at other times referred to as one who is completely committed to the eventual enlightenment of all beings. This dialectical relationship between present perfection and future conscious fulfillment is not really a tension. Contrary to popular understanding, the Bodhisattva is not a person wholly oriented towards the future, but a wisdom being who sees through the non-self-existing veils of past, future, and present. For even the present moment itself possesses no independent self-existence. The Bodhisattva never indulges in imagining that full enlightenment can only occur in the distant future, for every single thought flash reveals the absence of limits, separation, and distance. Spiritual awakening is not a process intrinsic to the very principle or nature of awareness, which is already pure presence. The Sutra clarifies, can any thought process whatsoever be identified or correlated with this pure presence? No, because its total simplicity in processlessness. In its most radical sense, universal conscious enlightenment is not a process at all. Nothing needs to be changed, taken away, gradually refined, or even simplified. The rare purity of supreme spiritual insight is identical with the natural, spontaneous purity of the countless configurations of forms that present themselves as the universe in all its multidimensionality. The continuous projecting and veiling, which is generated by the false conception of solid meanness and mindness, and which causes persons to experience reality as a painful cycle of birth and death, is like the insubstantial mist that can temporarily obscure the brilliant orb of the sun, but can never block its pervasive radiance. The ontological, transparent thread with which the veils of obvious or subtle egocentricity are woven is the conceptual function of affirming and negating. The Tathagata knows the ingrained tendency of countless beings to engage in literal affirmations and negations concerning ontological transparent structures of relativity, taking them at face value as solid and existing entities. Awakened enlightenment knows how these kaleidoscopic affirmations and negations arise, like a play of reflected light beams from the constituent processes of personal awareness called form, feeling, impulse, perception, and consciousness. One may wonder how this obscuring network of both dogmatic and instinctive affirmations and negations, which reflects as our habitual state of separateness, individual awareness, can ever be made transparent by any written or spoken teaching, which must inevitably consist of more affirmations and negations. Can logic reach beyond itself? Subhuti offers an important clarification of this fundamental concern simply by refusing to claim solid logical substance for the Prajnaparamita, while continuing to extol the power of its logical functioning. To reason about uncreated reality is just to play with words, yet from this coherent play, lightning bolts flash forth as Gnostic intuition, totally insubstantial, not coming into being even for an instant, yet diamond sharp and clear. Coherent play is an appropriate term for the dialectical passages of the Via Negativa, which are subtly interwoven by the Sutra with passages of cosmopoetic vision, both of which are Gnostic in nature. Logic, and by its extension, the entire coherent expanse of valid affirmations and negations, is taken seriously by the Mahayana, without being invested with the independent self-existence, precisely as all structures of relativity are taken seriously by bodhisattvas, yet never rarefied or objectified. Commitment to logic is an essential part of the commitment to compassionate action, and therefore to universal conscious enlightenment. However, relative structures, including logic, linguistics, social, and perceptual systems, are never experienced by the bodhisattva to be literal, substantially existent. The sutra speaks about the irrefutable and transcendent logic of the most revolutionary teaching. The panoramic compassionate action of the awakened one always includes a logic and dialectical component, although shining forth from pre-logic and alogic presence. The infinitely diverse teachings of truth, which the humble lords of enlightenment dialectically demonstrate and tenderly transmit to all living beings in this beginningless realm of apparent birth and death, all these subtle teachings flow and shine forth solely from the inexhaustible reservoir, treasury, and womb of truth energy, Mother Prajnaparamita. The practitioner of perfect wisdom returns along the compassionately guiding rays, logos, prajna, sheer intelligence, into the infinite sun of total awakeness. Thereupon the spreading sunlight of innumerable living worlds and conscious beings is directly perceived as the transparent presence of universal enlightenment. As the Prajnaparamita Sutra proclaims, the whole world is the insubstantial play of universal enlightenment through the transparent constituents of individual awareness. All is simply suchness or pure presence, indistinguishable and indistinguishable from simplicity. The favorite traditional illustration for this radical simplicity, which is referred to in Sanskrit by the term non-duality, is open space, empty space, or simply the principle of spaciousness. The principle, as the sutra queries dialectically, can you count, compare, measure, conceive, imagine, perceive, or feel the expanse of open space? Can you approach, reach, or attain open space? Can open space even be described as infinite? If one seriously contemplates these questions, allowing the cutting edge of the dialect to clear away naturally and effortlessly all eliminating conceptualizations and their constituent emotional obscurations, one can begin to experience existentially the central teachings of Prajnaparamita, that all phenomena are Buddha phenomena, or sheer awakeness, essentially like open space. Contemplation of the principle of empty space is always eliminating. No possible structures can substantially act upon or grasp one another because they are by nature neither active nor passive, just as open space cannot be designated as active or passive. As Mother Prajnaparamita promises, the Bodhisattva will experience the diamond of perfect wisdom to be like brilliant open space, which never decreases or increases, which is never lost and never found. The mother of Buddha, the mother of the Buddhas, constantly elucidates this mystic spaciousness, which is not a doctrine of nihilism, but her most intimate embrace. No beings or events substantially exist side by side, any more than open space substantially exists side by side with itself. This impossibility of any comparison is the root of the universal principle of inconceivability, or Prajnaparamita. Given this irreducible fact of unthinkability, not as a frustrating limit to our understanding, but as a beautiful, blissful openness and freedom from all limits, we know that no authentic expression of perfect wisdom will permit us to picture or conceptualize what is. This revolutionary teaching will always present simply the pure presence of transparent, selfless awakeness, which is absolutely insubstantial. The depth of unthinkability, the mother of all Buddhas, is the rich, radiant presence of what is. The sutra's transmission is simply itself. The transparent presence of the Buddha and the transparent presence of all phenomena are one transparent presence, not multiple or in any way divided or divisible. The Prajnaparamita Sutra makes the same radical point in its startling cosmopolite mode. Tathagata can lift up any particular billion world system on their big toe without any process of expansion or contraction, and then replace it again totally undisturbed, since they are masters of perfect wisdom. It would never occur to these Tathagatas that any interdependent existing billion world system being lifted up by any substantially existing big toe or returned to any describable or self-existing location. At this final horizon of non-duality, language becomes almost non-linguistic. The sutra can only report this unconstructed presence is ever perfect simplicity, or as it reveals elsewhere, this suchness of pure presence does not immigrate, migrate, transmigrate, or emanate. There is no division within pure presence. There is no multiplication of pure presence. Suchness cannot be enumerated even with the number one. Plunging into this ocean of transcendent insight, we are not entering some trance state for primordial simplicity. It is fully evident in and through the daily world. Suchness or pure presence is precisely the perfectly transparent way that all phenomena actually manifest. In the benign light of non-duality, we cease to hold even the subtle adversarial attitude with which religious practitioners regard the world. Even those powerful and dangerous structures, such as the selfish passions, which religious teachings advise human beings to renounce or to destroy, are themselves fluid, open, and transparent, inherently empty of self-existence. This adversarial attitude, encoded within various contemplative methods and religious disciplines, is actually identified by the sutra as the last obstacle to awakening. The bodhisattva awakens as Prajnaparamita by becoming blissfully free from any obsession with battling or obliterating ignorance, habitual formulations, personal consciousness, conventional names, finite sense experiences, taking birth or physically engendering or dying, physically degenerating or dying. In other words, perfect wisdom leaves the entire array of mundane appearances in its place, tangibly and coherently functional, yet ontologically transparent. The radical attitude that later blossomed as the Vajrayana, a tantric tradition of Buddhism, is thus contained implicitly in the Prajnaparamita Sutra. Both regard the non-self existing structures of relativity not as a major obstacle to enlightenment, but as a healing medicine which, when taken under the guidance of a wise physician, can generate the healthy and relaxed balance which permits the natural state of universal enlightenment to flower consciously. Then infinitely diverse structures of relativity, far from being some dangerous disease, are actually a healing medicine, for in their intrinsic selfless nature, interdependent structures perfectly express the mystery and transmit the spiritual energy of universal friendliness. Relativity itself, which can be viewed as limitless expanse of beloved beings, become the eye medicine to correct the impairment of our conceptual, emotional, and perceptual vision. Now we can spontaneously realize that all structures, simply as structures, are themselves essentially awakened enlightenment, being perfectly transparent to the ineffable, all embracing, and all transcending insight known as Buddhahood. Thus, without losing the slightest sharpness of compassionate sensibility, the master of Prajnaparamita can contemplate the apparently limited world of forms as being really the limitless expression of Buddhahood, every facet and every function streaming with the excellence and goodness of Buddha's positive energy and transcendent insight. The condensed energy of this awakening is startling because it becomes so concrete and immediate. Material and mental forms are themselves none other than the total awakening into Buddhahood. The intrinsic nature of every appearing form and every mode of consciousness is already and always perfect Buddha nature, the simplicity, directness, and totality of universal enlightenment. The Bodhisattva vow remains in full force, even exponentially increasing in compassionate intensity. Yet it is no longer understood as a vow to change or transform any structure in any way. The Bodhisattva's vow simply that all beings become conscious of universal enlightenment, which is the fact that the intrinsic nature of awareness or life itself is just Buddha nature, simple, direct, and total. The irreversibility committed Bodhisattva, who is permeated by the non-dualistic attitude of perfect wisdom, is intimately near to the awakening experienced by all Buddhas. About the spiritual capacity of the Bodhisattva who is actualizing his or her full humanity, the Sutra confirms. It will not be difficult to experience the spontaneous flowering of goodness which displays all the actual and possible structures of relativity as a perfectly harmonious and transparent Buddha field, as the natural expression of the infinitely beautiful Buddha qualities, foremost among which is the most tender and loving compassion for all lives. We need hardly note that compassionate love here retains its position in the foremost of the highest realization, just as the Venerable Tsongkhapa rediscovered and demonstrated logically and empirically in the vast laboratory of his philosophical, contemplative, and religious practices. The directionless direction. The spiritual development of a humble earthly student of perfect wisdom is examined in the sublime saga Asada Parudita. This noble son of the Buddha family was not a direct disciple of the historic Buddha, but through his enthusiastic love of truth expressed by ceaseless weeping and longing, he became a direct disciple of Buddha nature. His inspiring quest points out the directionless direction in which we all can hope to proceed, as Buddha nature is inwardly informed. Sada Parudita. As Buddha nature informed him, you will go beyond the stages of studying and contemplating the Prajnaparamita from books or listening to perfect wisdom expounded by excellent scholars. You will become able to experience the teaching emanating through the diverse human and divine forms directly from the Supreme Teacher, Prajnaparamita herself, Mother of all Buddhas. With this blessed perception and knowledge, one sees and knows the person who is authentically expounding the perfection of wisdom to be none other than the blissful mother and wisdom teacher. What greater spiritual opportunity can there be than this? We may wonder how we can avail ourselves of this most precious opportunity, which faces us right now as readers of the Prajnaparamita Sutra. The sutra hints at how to open this door of truth. One can awaken to the teaching of Prajnaparamita simply by experiencing these resounding declarations themselves here and now, as the astonishing lion's roar of a fully awakened Buddha. Should we concentrate on the verbal declarations of the sutra as they shimmer before us on the printed page, perhaps close our eyes and visualize them as letters of golden energy streaming through the heart of our awareness? Obviously not. We simply need to look everywhere with the eyes of compassion and transcendent insight, immersing ourselves in the universal music of relativity, in the blissful embrace of the wisdom goddess. As the sutra reveals, not only these transcendent declarations of Prajnaparamita, but every single mundane structure itself is the lion's roar of perfect wisdom. Even within the explosion of wisdom, the mind streams of the bodhisattvas, those impeccable diamond beings of enlightened compassion, still continue to flow on their precise course. Ever loyal to love, they pursue the interdependent evolutionary careers of conscious beings, remaining inseparable from all that lives. We must not end this discussion with any sense of the primacy of interpersonal, with any sense of mystic merging or nihilistic disappearance. Yet the mode in which bodhisattvas continue to live, laugh, weep, teach, and empathize is unthinkable, just as the existential status of all phenomena is unthinkable, as the sutra suggests. The enlightened art of the bodhisattva is to appear to move in the transparent sphere of conventional characteristics and harmoniously function casualty, which, remaining totally awake to the signlessness and causelessness of sheer reality. This liberating way of living is not an illusion created by mirrors. The bodhisattvas are emphatically not shadows in a realm of shadows. Honestly and seriously, they manifest on earth and upon other planes of being the irresistible force of awakening, which is the power of Prajnaparamita, to clear away every obstacle or obscuration from the lives of conscious beings who are equally supremely precious. Physical, emotional, spiritual healings are spontaneously generated in the presence of this energy of transcendent insight. There are no independent, self-arising structures which could become infected by disease, nor is disease itself substantially self-existent. This transcendent insight into the total absence of any separate self-existence manifests healing, transformation, and illuminating power. Advanced practitioners of Prajnaparamita heal and protect By the concentrated application of the principle of perfect wisdom, a process the sutra called evoking truth energy. This force is not some provisional countermeasure, but it is the supremely active principle of non-duality or indivisibility. Yet the sutra warns about the dangers of self-deception and pride, to which thermologic or apparent miraculous actions may expose to the immature practitioner. Engaging in the fullest range of human responsibility, the Bodhisattva continuously vows, I will live and act totally through perfect wisdom so that my body, speech, and mind here and now will be the most radical teaching of the Buddha that is called Prajnaparamita. This diamond vow, I, completely free from any abstract or habitual notion of substantial or independent I-ness, is the irreversible committed mind stream of the Bodhisattva, who lives in constant heartfelt gratitude to Mother Prajnaparamita and to all of her empowered representatives. The Bodhisattvas live in tender solicitude for all beloved sentient beings, each of whom express the perfect transparency of Prajnaparamita. Bodhisattvas themselves become Goddess Prajnaparamita's fully conscious expression. The adamantine awareness who lives and breathes as this transparency is the living, breathing Prajnaparamita, no longer just a narrowly focused conscious being, but an omnipresent, compassionate awareness, fully awake to universal enlightenment. By profoundly contemplating the Prajnaparamita Sutra, may the inevitable station of the Bodhisattva become manifest. May all conscious beings everywhere evolve swiftly to the point of encountering and appreciating these teachings. By profoundly contemplating the Prajnaparamita Sutra, may the inevitable station of Bodhisattvahood become manifest. May all conscious beings everywhere evolve swiftly to the point of encountering and appreciating these teachings.